Welcome to my channel. Today we will explore the life of Zeus, the supreme god of Olympus, wielder of thunder, ruler of the skies, and master of mankind's fate in Greek mythology. Part 1. Origins and the prophecy in the dawnless age, when there was no blue sky, no deep ocean, no sunlight. The universe was nothing but a boundless chaos, formless, shapeless, and timeless. From this primordial void, Gaia, the Earth Mother, arose, stretching her vast body into mountains, valleys, and the first seas. Above Gaia came Uranus, the sky god, who embraced the Earth Mother with his great dome of shimmering blue. The love of Gaia and Uranus brought forth a mighty generation, the Titans, colossal, immortal beings who carried within them the raw power of creation itself. Among them was Cronus, the youngest Titan, but also the most cunning and ruthless. Besides the Titans, Gaia bore the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants who could forge thunderbolts, and the Hecatoncheires, monstrous beings with 100 hands and 50 heads, whose strength could shake the very fabric of the world. Uranus, fearing the power of his children, cast the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires deep into the abyss of Tartarusa, a place darker and deeper than the underworld itself, ensuring they would never see the light of day. Gaia's heart ached with grief and burned with fury. She called upon the Titans to rise against Uranus. All hesitated except Cronus. Armed with an adamantine sickle given by Gaia, Cronus lay in wait. When Uranus slumbered, Cronus struck, overthrowing his father and claiming the throne of the heavens. Cronus became the supreme ruler of the cosmos, reigning alongside his sister and wife Rhea. But power always walks hand in hand with the shadow of destiny. From deep within Tartarus, a prophecy echoed. A child of Cronus will overthrow him, just as he overthrew his father. The prophecy hung over Cronus like a sword poised to strike. Terrified, he resolved to prevent his fate. Each time Rhea bore a child, Cronus swallowed the infant the moment it cried its first breath. Thus, darkness and silence engulfed Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon in his belly. Rhea, torn by grief and desperation, could not bear to lose another child. When she became pregnant for the 6th time, she conspired with Gaia and Uranus to save the newborn. At the hour of birth, she secretly left Cronus' palace and journeyed to the distant island of Crete, where Mount Ida rose between sea and sky, in a deep cavern along the mountainside. Rhea gave birth to a strong, healthy boy Zeus. His eyes shone like the first lightning bolt to tear through the night. His cries echoed like thunder in the distance. Rhea entrusted the baby to the nymphs, spirits of springs and forests, to raise him. The divine goat Amalthea nursed him with milk sweet as honey. Outside the cave, the curate's armored dancers clashed their shields and spears in wild rhythm to drown out the child's cries from Cronus. Years Rhea returned to Cronus carrying a stone wrapped in swaddling cloth, claiming it was her newborn son. Unsuspecting, Cronus swallowed the stone, just as he had swallowed the others. Thus, Zeus escaped the fate of being swallowed into darkness. Within the cave of Mount Ida, Zeus grew strong and wise. He learned to climb sheer cliffs, to read the wind for coming storms, and to snap the hardest branches with his bare hands. Amalthea, with her golden curved horns, would sometimes let Zeus play with the magical sparks that danced from her horns. The nymphs taught him of the natural order, of justice, and of courage when he came of age. Gaia revealed the truth of his father's tyranny and the prophecy. A fire of determination blazed in Zeus' heart. He would free his brothers and sisters, and overthrow the despot Cronus. The path ahead would lead him into the most brutal war of the age, a war that would decide the fate of the cosmos. Part 2. The king of Olympus. 10 years of the Titanomachy had turned the world into a blazing battlefield. Mountains crumbled, the seas roared, and the sky blazed with the lightning bolts hurled by Zeus at his enemies. At last, with the help of the monstrous Hecatoncheires and the Cyclopes, Zeus defeated his father, Cronus, and the entire Titan host. The defeated were bound in chains and cast into Tartarus, where the darkness was thick and the cold wind howled like an eternal lament. 3 Hecatoncheires stood guard, 100 hands and 50 heads each, allowing no one to escape. Victory brought peace, but also a question: who would rule this new world? On the misty heights of Olympus, Zeus and his brothers Poseidon and Hades sat around a massive stone table. Before them lay 3 white pebbles, each to decide the fate of a god. Hades drew first and received the black stone of the underworld, the realm where souls rest. Poseidon took the blue stone of the sea, hearing the waves as if they were calling his name. Zeus drew the white stone of the sky, and from that moment, he became king of the gods, ruling over Olympus and all living beings beneath the sun. Zeus built a resplendent palace of white clouds atop Olympus. The mightiest gods gathered there: Hero, the proud queen; Athena, wisdom, sharp as a blade; Apollo and Artemis, the light and shadow of the heavens; Ares, the blood and fire of war; Hermes, feet swifter than the wind. From this place, the laws of the gods were decreed, shaping the fate of mankind. Though married to Hera, Zeus's heart wandered. He once became a shower of golden rain to reach Dano, and Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, was born. Another time he turned into a white swan to caress Leda, who bore Helen, whose beauty would spark the Trojan War. Yet again, Zeus became a white bull to carry Europa across the sea, and she bore Minos, king of Crete. These tales spread across the mortal world, half in fear, half in awe, but peace did not last. For Gaia, Mother Earth, raged at the imprisonment of her Titan children. She bore Typhon, a colossal monster with 100 dragon heads breathing fire, his body reaching the clouds. The battle between Zeus and Typhon shook the world. Thunderbolts fell like rain, the seas rose in storms, and the land split apart. In the end, Zeus hurled Typhon down and buried him beneath Mount Etna. From then on, each volcanic eruption was said to be the roar of the chained monster. Zeus was also swift to punish humankind when they grew arrogant. A great flood swept away all life, sparing only Deucalion and Pyrrha to repopulate the earth. Prometheus, who had stolen fire from Olympus to give to man, was chained to the Caucasus Mountains, where each day an eagle devoured his liver, and each night it grew back anew. Though his tales blend mercy with harshness, Zeus remained the supreme symbol of power. In Olympia, a colossal statue of gold and ivory was erected, portraying the god with a stern gaze, holding a scepter and lightning bolt, watching over mankind as if to remind them the order of this world rests in my hands. Part 3. The power, schemes, and legacy of Zeus. The years passed, and the reign of Zeus over Olympus grew ever more solid. Yet his story was not merely one of thunder and loot, was also woven from love affairs, heroes, betrayals, and wars that shook the very fabric of the world. Children of glory and tragedy, Zeus's bloodline spread across the realms, giving birth to mortals and demigods whose names would echo through eternity. Foremost among them was Heracles, son of Zeus and the mortal woman Alcmene. Disguised as a mortal king, Zeus approached Alcmene, and from their union came a child unlike any other. Hera, burning with jealousy, sent a massive serpents to the infant's crib, yet the child, barely able to walk, seized each serpent in his tiny fists and crushed the life from them. Heracles grew into a man of unmatched strength, but Heracles' wrath was unrelenting, cursing him to endure 12 labors beyond mortal limits, slaying the Nemean lion, severing the heads of the Hydra, capturing the golden horned Cyrenian hind, and stealing the golden apples of the Hesperids. Each feat became proof of Zeus's power flowing through his son's veins. Then there was Perseus, born when Zeus visited Dano as a shower of golden light. From the moment of his birth, destiny pulled him toward danger. Armed with a mirrored shield and a divine sword, Perseus sailed across treacherous seas to face the Gorgon Medusa. He struck swiftly, severing her head without meeting her deadly gaze. His journey did not end there. He rescued the princess Andromeda from a sea monster, bringing peace to her kingdom. From his love with Europa, Zeus fathered Minos, the ruler of Crete. Under Minos's reign, the labyrinth was built, a prison for the monstrous Minotaur, a tale that would become one of Greece's most haunting legends. Whispers of rebellion in Olympus. Yet, even on Olympus, Zeus's authority was not unshakable. Once Hera, Athena, and Poseidon conspired to bind him, hoping to curb his dominance. Their treachery might have succeeded had Thetis not called upon Briareus, the 100-handed giant who frees Zeus from his chains. With thunder in his eyes, Zeus punished the traitors, reminding all who would challenge him that the king of gods tolerated no defiance. The war of the giants, but the greatest threats came not from the halls of Olympus, but from the earth itself. After the fall of the Titans and the defeat of the monstrous Typhon, Gaia birthed the gigantous giants with the lower bodies of serpents and the rage of the deep earth. Prophecy declared that only a god and a mortal together could destroy them, and so Zeus summoned Heracles. The battle raged across plains and mountains. the sky lit with storms as Zeus hurled bolts of pure lightning. Heracles' arrows struck the hearts of the mightiest giants Alconius and Porphyrion, bringing an end to their chaos. The ground shook, and Olympus once again stood secure. The laws of Zeus was not only the wielder of storms but the guardian of sacred order. As Zeus Xenios, he protected travelers and the bonds of hospitality. As Zeus Horkios, he punished those who broke oaths, and as Zeus Agaraios, he presided over justice in the marketplace. His decree was clear: he who swears falsely before the gods shall be struck by the lightning of Olympus. Mortals revered him for his fairness, yet some gods whispered about the severity of his judgments. Love, eternity, and legacy, though his heart often wandered, Zeus always returned to Hera. Their union was one of storms and calms, yet it endured. He watched over his many descendants, ensuring that the Olympian bloodline would birth more kings, heroes, and tragedies to enrich the tapestry of Greek myth. Across the Greek world, temples rose in his honor, and the Olympic Games were founded to celebrate his name. Strength, wisdom, and courage were tested in the arenas, echoing the virtues Zeus demanded from gods and men alike. Zeus, the final silhouette over Olympus. On the peak of Olympus, dark clouds curled around golden pillars, whispering secrets only the gods could hear. After countless years of rule, Zeus sat upon his throne, gazing down at the world below. He had defeated Cronus, torn Typhon apart, and swept away every giant that dared challenge his crown. All enemies seemed vanquished, yet deep within, Zeus knew a new kind of foe was rising, not of sword and spear, but of human thought. In the mortal realm, the names of heroes rang across the lands: Heracles, whose hands could lift the sky; Perseus, who wielded a blade to strike down monsters; Theseus, who slew the Minotaur in the labyrinth. They were children of Zeus, his pride and his glory, yet they also cast a silent shadow over the gods. Each of their victories made mortals believe they could shape their own fate without divine blessing. One day, in the ancient temple of Titanomachy, the priests brought Zeus a strange prophecy: when prayers fall into silence, your throne will tremble. Zeus gripped his scepter. He knew these were no empty words. The world was changing. Athena and Apollo, the younger gods, encouraged mortals to trust in their own wisdom and strength. Even in Olympus, the once unshakable faith in Zeus began to show cracks. Darker news came from the Caucasus. Prometheus the Titan, whom Zeus had chained for gifting fire to mankind, still lay bound to the cliff, suffering day after day. But to mortals, Prometheus had become a symbol of courage and defiance. Many young gods began to secretly sympathize with him. Zeus, enraged, ordered the chains tightened, yet in his heart he knew no shackle could extinguish a fire once it had ignited in the human spirit. Then came the Trojan War. At first, Zeus kept his distance, letting the mortal kingdoms decide their fate. But Hera, Athena, Aphrodite, and even Ares threw themselves into the conflict, dragging Olympus into its storm. Though Zeus tried to maintain balance, he could not remain entirely apart. He let heroes like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus face their destinies, yet he quietly placed trials before them to see who was worthy of immortality. Years passed, and Zeus still ruled, but on cold, windy nights, he often stood alone on the highest cliff of Olympus. Beneath his feet, new temples rose, while others crumbled into ruin. The prayers still came, but not as loudly as before. In his dreams, Zeus saw a great fire spreading across the mortal world, and no one tried to put it out. This fire was not Prometheus's, it was the light of knowledge, born from within humankind. When Zeus awoke, he did not rage. He simply smiled. Perhaps in the end, even the mightiest ruler must learn to accept that every rain-weather of gods or men must one day yield to a new age. Zeus, the twilight of the gods. The years after the Trojan War were quieter on Olympus. Yet an unease lingered like a storm hidden beyond the horizon. Zeus's hair, once a deep midnight black, now bore streaks of silver. His eyes still burned like lightning, but the fire behind them had grown older, wiser perhaps, but also weary. The mortal world had changed. Cities grew vast and proud, with walls of marble and marketplaces that thrummed with life. In some places, people still sacrificed oxen and sheep to the father of gods. In others, they built shrines not to Zeus but to their own kings, philosophers, and heroes. Faith was slowly shifting, and Zeus could feel it in the silence between prayers. Athena, ever the voice of reason, came to him one evening as the golden sun bled into the horizon. "Father," she said, her voice calm but edged with urgency, the world will not always need Olympus. Mortals have begun to believe they can govern themselves. They will look to their own laws instead of divine will. Zeus studied her for a long moment. He had heard similar words before, in the prophecy at Dodona. This was not news, it was an inevitability, yet to hear it from his own daughter made it heavier. Meanwhile, deep in the west, whispers rose from the realm of the dead. Hades spoke of shadows that did not belong to him, spirits of defiance, not submission. They were the shades of mortals who had died without ever calling upon the gods. The underworld was filling with them, and they walked its halls without fear of divine judgment. The final blow came in the form of a vision. One night, as Zeus slept upon his golden bed, he dreamed of a great river of light flowing through the mortal world. It carried no offerings, no prayers, only knowledge, ideas, and voices. It spread faster than any chariots, stronger than any army. In this vision, he saw mortals writing their own fates in ink instead of leaving them to the stars. When Zeus awoke, the first light of dawn spilled over Olympus. He walked alone to the highest point, where the air was thin and the clouds swirled around his feet. He thought of his first battles, overthrowing Cronus, defeating the giants, chaining Typhon. Back then, the enemy had always been clear, but this was different. This was not a war he could win with thunderbolts, perhaps. He thought it was never meant to be one. From that day, Zeus began to loosen his grip. He allowed the gods to interfere less in mortal affairs. The wars of men became theirs alone to fight. Storms still came, but sometimes they were left to pass without divine wrath. In time, mortals noticed. Some forgot the gods. Others spoke of them only as stories, legends told by the fire. One evening, as the sun sank into a blood-red sea, Zeus stood beside Hera on the balcony of their palace. The winds were soft, and for once, the air was not charged with storm. Hera glanced at him and asked, "Do you regret it? Giving them the world?" Zeus's lips curved into a faint smile. "No," he said. "We were always meant to give it to them. We were only keeping it safe until they were ready." And so, the king of Olympus remained not as the tyrant of fate, but as its quiet guardian. His thunder still echoed in the mountains. His storms still swept across the seas. But now, they were reminders, not commands. That Zeus knew the day would come when Olympus itself would fade into the mist of memory. But until then, he would watch not as a ruler desperate to hold power, but as a father watching his children walk on their own, knowing the sky was still his, even if no one remembered to look up. Zeus, the last thunder centuries had passed since Zeus loosened his hold over the mortal world. Olympus remained high above the clouds, bathed in eternal light, but it had grown quieter. The great feasts were rarer now. The halls echoed not with the clamor of gods, but with the wind whispering through. Many of the younger gods had vanished from the mountain entirely, wandering the earth in mortal disguise or retreating into realms of their own making. Hermes roamed distant lands, content to carry messages only when asked. Aphrodite lingered among poets and lovers, her presence now a rumor rather than a certainty. Even mighty Ares grew restless, fighting not wars of gods but skirmishes among men. Zeus himself seldom left his throne, yet when he did, he no longer descended with lightning in hand. Instead, he walked the earth quietly, like a shepherd checking on a flock that no longer needed its master. He watched empires rise, golden cities crumble to dust, and new nations forged their own laws without fear of divine retribution. But peace, even for gods, is never eternal. One day, the sky itself began to dim lit with storm, but with a strange, unnatural shadow. It crept across the world like spilled ink, blotting out the sun. From the far edges of creation came whispers of a being older than the Titans, Nyx, the primordial night, stirring from the depths of chaos. She was no enemy of Zeus by blood, But her awakening carried an unspoken truth. Even gods could fade into the dark. The Olympians gathered one last time in the great hall. The fire and the hearth burned low, casting long shadows on the walls. Athena stood by Zeus's side, her gaze steady but grave. "If Nyx takes the sky, there will be no dawn," she warned. "Without dawn, the mortal world will forget not just us, but the light itself." Hera reached for Zeus's hand. She had fought beside him through rebellions, prophecies, and betrayals, but never had she seen him hesitate so long. Finally, Zeus rose, the weight of eternity in his stance. "Then we will remind the world that the sky is still ours," he said. The battle was unlike any before. No thunderbolt could pierce Nyx's veil. No spear could wound the night. The gods fought in silence, their powers swallowed by the darkness. Zeus hurled storm after storm, each strike lighting the void for only a heartbeat before the shadow consumed it again. When the last bolt left his hand, Zeus felt something he had not felt since the Titanomachy did, the kind that reached into the bones, the kind that told him this would be his final storm. And then, in the heart of the blackness, he heard a sound, not the roar of battle, but the distant laughter of children, human children. They were telling stories, their voices carrying the names of gods into the night, not as prayers, but as tales, legends. Zeus understood. It did not matter if mortals believed in his power. What mattered was that they remembered, that memory itself was a kind of immortality. With the last of his strength, Zeus unleashed a single perfect bolt of lightning, not to destroy Nyx, but to split the shadow and let the dawn pass through. The light poured over the world once more, scattering the darkness. Nyx, uninjured but content, withdrew into the folds of the universe, leaving the sky to the day. When the battle ended, the gods stood victorious, but they knew it was not the same kind of victory as before. Zeus returned to his throne, not in triumph, but in peace. His storms grew rare after that, and some say the father of gods now sleeps, watching from dreams as the mortal world turns without him. Yet sometimes, when thunder rolls far away and lightning dances on the horizon, mortals look up and remember the old stories, and, in that moment, Zeus smiles. Part 7. When Olympus fell, silent generations turned into centuries, and centuries into ages. The world of mortals changed beyond recognition. Cities of marble became ruins buried beneath wild forests. Empires that once shook under Zeus's storms were now nothing more than chapters in dusty books. And still, Olympus stood on the mountain, who remained crowned with its eternal palace, veiled by clouds no mortal could pierce. Yet inside, the great hall was quiet. No golden goblets clinked in celebration. No divine laughter rang beneath the vaulted sky. The gods were fewer now. Many had chosen to wander among the stars. Others had dissolved into the myths that once praised them. One evening, as the sun set behind distant mountains, Zeus stood on the balcony of Olympus, gazing at the mortal world below. From here, it was a patchwork of rivers, cities, and oceans, glowing with the strange lights mortals had made for themselves. They no longer prayed for rain, nor feared the crack of thunder. They had built their own powers, machines that flew without wings, towers that touched the sky, and weapons that rivaled the god's own fire. Athena came to stand beside him, her armor absent, her voice calm. "They have learned to rule themselves," she said. Zeus did not answer immediately. His eyes traced the patterns of lightning in a distant storm. Finally he spoke. "Yes, and in doing so they have forgotten who taught them to dream of the sky." Athena smiled faintly. "They have not forgotten, Father. They have simply turned us into stories. And stories last longer than any throne." The words settled in the air like the final note of a song. Zeus realized then that this was the way of all things. Even gods must yield to time. Power fades, temples crumble, but the memory woven into human hearts endures. So on the night of the winter solstice, Zeus summoned the last council of Olympus. One by one, the remaining gods gathered: Hera, Athena, Hermes, Apollo, and a few more who had lingered through the long quiet. Together, they agreed Olympus would withdraw from the mortal realm, not in defeat, but in completion. Their work was done. The decision was marked with no grand battle, No thunderous farewell. The palace lights dimmed, the wind stilled, and a gentle snowfall covered the marble steps. In the morning, Olympus was gone, not destroyed, but hidden, tucked away in a fold of the world where only the oldest stories could find it. And yet, on certain nights, when the air is heavy and the horizon flashes with a sudden storm, travelers say they hear the low rumble of a god's laughter in the clouds, a reminder that the king of the sky has not vanished entirely. He simply watches from beyond, waiting for the day mortals once again look upward, not in fear, but in wonder.